The wind was still in his ears long after he left the lighthouse behind. Thomas Hale trudged along the narrow, muddy path toward his cottage on the cliff, boots heavy with salt and sand. The sea never truly left a man, it clung to his clothes, his hair, his very breath. After 14 days alone with nothing but the roar of the waves and the endless swing of the lamp, he was finally on his way home. Yet even as the cliffs rose before him, dark and familiar, he felt a strange emptiness settle in his chest. The year was 1874, and Thomas had been a lighthouse keeper for 12 of them. He had tended the light through gales that tore ships apart in nights so black that even God seemed to have turned his face away. He had watched men drown beneath him and had written the reports that no one ever wanted to read. The pay was meager, the hours endless, and the solitude suffocating. His wife, Mary, met him at the door. Her hair was pinned back neatly, though he could see the threads of gray that hadn't been there last spring. She smiled faintly when she saw him, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "You're back early," she said. "There wasn't much to fix this week. Oil's still good, lens is clean." He set his lantern down by the hearth and stood awkwardly, unsure whether to embrace her or not. The last time he'd done that, she'd pulled away, unused to the roughness of his hands or the smell of whale oil and smoke that clung to him. He felt more ghost than husband when he came home now, something distant, flickering, and half real. Dinner was stew, the same as always. Mary spoke about the neighbors, about how the grocer's boy had run off to join a whaling ship, about the new minister at the chapel. Thomas listened, nodding when it seemed right, though his mind wandered back to the tower. He could still see the lamp, swinging its slow arc across the sea, a pale eye searching the horizon. Even here, miles away, he could almost hear it calling him back. When she rose to wash the dishes, he slipped outside. The night air was sharp, smelling of kelp and cold iron. Down below, the tide was creeping in, whispering against the rocks. From where he stood, he could see the faint beam of the lighthouse in the distance, his light, his burden. Each rotation took 12 seconds. He knew it by heart. He had once believed the lighthouse noble work, keeping sailors safe, guiding them home. But after years of storms and loneliness, the romance had rotted away. Now it felt more like a punishment, an endless vigil against a sea that cared nothing for him. He had missed his children growing up, their laughter had faded from the cottage long ago, replaced by letters that came less and less often. They had moved inland, away from the coast and its ghosts. Sometimes he wondered if he should have done the same. He sat on the low stone wall by the cliff and took out his pipe. The first draw of tobacco burned pleasantly, grounding him. A gull screamed overhead, the same cry that had greeted him every morning at the lighthouse. He thought of the sound the light made when the gears turned, a steady grind, like a clock counting down eternity. Mary came out a while later, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders. "You'll catch cold," she said softly. Her voice was kinder now. She sat beside him, though not too close. They watched the sea together. "Still looks the same, doesn't it?" he murmured. "It always does," she said. "But you look older every time you come back." He smiled, though it hurt to do it. "The sea takes its toll. You could leave, Tom. You've done your part. They'd give you a pension, enough to live on. And then what? Sit here watching the waves like a fool?" He shook his head. "I wouldn't know what to do without the light." Mary said nothing. She knew it was true. The lighthouse had become part of him, a curse he couldn't let go of. Without it, there would only be silence, and the memories that lurked in that silence. He thought of the storm last winter, the worst in years. He'd been trapped in the tower for 3 days, waves slamming against the base like cannon fire. The keeper's quarters had flooded, and the stairs were slick with ice. He'd kept the light burning by sheer will, shoveling coal with numb fingers, praying that the wind wouldn't shatter the glass. On the 3rd night, he'd seen a ship go down less than a mile offshore. He could hear the men shouting, faint as ghosts. There had been nothing he could do. Sometimes, when the wind howled around the tower, he still heard their voices. Mary touched his hand. "You don't sleep well anymore, do you?" He looked down at her hand, small, pale, trembling slightly, and felt the weight of the years press against him. "No," he said. "I suppose I don't." They stayed there a while, watching the slow sweep of the light. The clouds shifted, revealing a pale sliver of moon. Somewhere below, the surf crashed and hissed like breath through broken teeth. When they finally went inside, the fire had burned low. Mary went to bed, but Thomas lingered. He sat by the window, listening to the wind against the shutters. On the small table beside him lay his journal, the same one he used at the lighthouse. He opened it and began to write. November 3, 1874. The sea was calm today. No ship sighted. Lantern in good condition. Felt the weight of the quiet again. Sometimes I wonder if the light watches me, instead of the other way around. He stopped, pen hovering over the page. He wanted to write about the loneliness, the ache of returning home to someone who had become a stranger, the way the sea followed him even into his dreams. But there were no words for that kind of emptiness. So he simply closed the journal and blew out the lamp. Upstairs, Mary slept. The floorboards creaked as he moved quietly through the dark. He lay beside her but kept his eyes open, watching the faint light that crept through the window, his light, still sweeping across the room every 12 seconds. He counted the intervals, the way he always did. 12 seconds of light. 12 seconds of darkness. Over and over. Forever. By dawn, the wind had picked up again. Thomas rose, pulled on his boots, and looked toward the horizon. The sea was gray and restless, the sky already thick with rain. He should have felt dread at the thought of going back, but instead, a strange calm settled over him. The lighthouse was cruel, yes, but it was predictable. Out there, he knew who he was. He kissed Mary's forehead gently before he left. She stirred but did not wake. When he reached the path that led down to the cove, he turned once to look back at the cottage. Smoke rose faintly from the chimney. Beyond it, the light still turned, unceasing. He shouldered his bag and began the long walk back toward the tower, where the sea waited, patient as ever. And as he disappeared into the mist, the beam swept over him once more, a cold, white blessing from the only companion he had ever truly known.